You're watching BrainStormAcres. I'm Henry.
And I'm Irene.
And today we're going to be answering a tag that we got from Opie at Brew City Gardener. The topic is 5 gardening tips.
Number 1, write it down. I hear from people all the time that they can't remember what that wonderful variety of whatever the heck it was that they grew. Write it down. If you count on being able to keep track of an empty seed packet, that just may not happen. Get yourself a composition notebook from someplace cheap at the dollar store. It'll cost you $1. You can decorate the outside. You can do anything fancy you want to that helps you spot it in your pile of junk at home. But the point is, write it down. Write down the date, write down the variety, and write down what you did.
Yeah, this is really important because it's amazing how much your brain will change what actually happened. And when you go back and read it, you'll find out, no, it didn't happen that way.
Right. You'll think you planted it one month, you planted it a different month. You'll think you used a specific type of fertilizer, you didn't. And then when you're trying to reproduce that because it did work for you, or it didn't work for you and you don't want to reproduce it, you can't do it.
So number two is know what's in your compost and your amendments. This is really critical and really came home to me this year because we got some straw and we didn't know where exactly the straw came from. The problem with compost that you don't know where it came from, or at least what's in it, is that it may have herbicides in it that will make your garden barren.
Certain types of herbicides are used a lot to manage weeds in crops. So it's important that if you get something like straw, you know where it came from.
And a lot of those herbicides are specific to allow the straw or the hay to continue growing, but kill everything else. And the stuff persists for years.
They actually did a study, was it Oregon, Washington? Washington. All of a sudden they had all these organic gardeners whose gardens were dying and wouldn't work at all. And the university there did a study and discovered that a bunch of the hay and straw that had been used to compost was contaminated with herbicides that literally toxified these people's gardens in effect for the rest of their lives.
So be very careful about using lawn clippings because a lot of lawn fertilizers have these specific herbicides in it.
If you use broad leaf, wide spectrum fertilizer combination weed killer on your lawn, don't use the clippings in your compost. Number 3, know your local weather patterns. Try and figure out where the prevailing winds come from, the rainfall amounts. Where's your nearest weather station? I can tell you where my nearest weather station is. It's 8 miles. It's 8 miles north of town. Now we're about, as a crow flies, 3 miles south of town. Now that may not sound like much, but it's in the edge of the national forest, and the weather there has very, very little to do with where I live. The weather station is usually off by at least 5 degrees. I've seen it as much as 15 degrees off, either hotter or colder. The rain pattern is completely different there. So you have to figure out what's going on where you are. If you're fortunate enough to have local friends who are gardeners, ask them. Because if they're observant, and I hate to say it, not all gardeners are, but if they are observant and they're serious gardeners, you should be able to get a lot of good information from them quickly.
Yeah, this is something a lot of people don't think about is know what you're going to do with your harvest before you plant it. You need to know if you're going to eat it yourself fresh, or if you're going to can it, or if you're going to freeze it, if you're going to give it away, or if you're going to sell it. Simple, but a lot of people make that mistake. They overplant for what they're going to do, or they underplant. So just know what you're going to do with your harvest.
Right. If you plan to freeze or to can, get yourself something like the Ball Blue book if you don't already have it. It'll tell you exactly how to handle it, and you can look at that and say, do I want to spend the time doing that?
Number 5.
Read the descriptions of the varieties.
Boy, this is a really big one.
Now that may sound silly, but it's really not. For instance, I wanted to grow pak choi this year, and I discovered that some of the varieties, if the temperature where they are drops below 50 degrees at night, within 2 weeks of when they're transplanted, they'll bolt. I don't have that type of control, and my temperatures often swing wildly at every time of the year. So I specifically chose a variety that is considered to be bolt resistant for both hot and cold weather. Try and find seed companies that will give you that kind of specific information.
And don't forget to write it down. I mean, a lot of this stuff seems really, really, really nitpicky, but don't forget to write it down. If you forget to write it down, you're going to eventually forget. Well, we hope that these 5 tips are of help to you. We've certainly found them to be useful in our gardening career, which has spanned a number of years.
Quite a few. We do need to tag 2 people on this.
So one that we'd like to nominate is Steve at Digwell Greenfingers.
Right.
He's in the UK and he does some absolutely fabulous videos. If you haven't watched him, you have to watch him.
Yeah.
He grows the most amazing vegetables.
And our number 2 was Dan at Home on the Sticks.
We don't know if Dan's actually participated at this point. If he has, we're sorry to double tag you. He also has a fabulous channel. He's a gas to watch. He does some really cool things. You really have to go watch him at Home in the Sticks.
Right.
Thanks very much for watching.
You're going to get bitten.
Please like and subscribe if you like what we're doing here. And don't forget to hit the bell for notifications so you know when we've published something new.
Until later, bye.
Bye.